In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome us. These words from the prologue of the Gospel of John mean so much more when we hear them in the context of this day, this Good Friday, where we seek to embody the remembrance that Christ died on the cross. His death by crucifixion is a touchstone of our faith. In the reality of the human condition, death always means something, no matter whose it is. But for today, we followers of Christ observe this most solemn of liturgies with the understanding that this death, the death of our Messiah, our Christ, our Son of God, our Redeemer, this death reaches into the corners of our souls, largely because we are people created in the image of God ourselves. And we are left to consider the peculiarity of a world without a Savior whose last spoken words before his death were, "It is finished." Finished? How in the world can this be the end? Now, we have the benefit of more than 2,000 years of retelling of the story of Jesus, so we know what is to come with the sunrise on Sunday morning. But for today, Jesus is gone, and we are in darkness. The world that was filled with the glory of God from creation and through the magnificent incarnation of Jesus is now a world filled with a deep sense of emptiness, of darkness, and the question of why this happened at all. That same question was asked of my small group during my first theology class in seminary. Did Jesus have to die on the cross? That question stopped me in my tracks. It stumped me. And if you know me even just a little, you may not believe this, but I didn't have anything to say. Did Jesus have to die on the cross? When our preceptor offered this question, we were a group of rookie theologians just beginning our first class of theology in our formal education to become priests and pastors. It was a bit surprising how quiet the room became as we all turned silent and withdrew, as we contemplated the question and what that meant. What sort of God makes a plan for someone to die an unjust death? What sort of God willingly takes on death and suffering? And why? How might the story of our faith be different without the crucifixion? I could go on and on with our questions, but you get the point. Elizabeth Johnson is a theologian who has greatly influenced my Christology, or my understanding of Jesus. She writes in her book, Consider Jesus, that the cross does not represent an event between the Father and the Son, but rather the cross reveals the tension between God and the rest of us. Jesus' trial and execution is born out of mistrust, fear, power seeking, and the need to be right being more appealing than reason. And that deep tension between God and the rest of us is illustrated in those final words we just heard that Jesus said before he died. It is finished. We are witnesses today on this Good Friday of Jesus' humanity and our own, joining more fully together in those words. Because we know the story doesn't end here. And Jesus saying, "It is finished," is actually a heralding of the good news. We're called by those words, we're compelled by them to continue Jesus' ministry of standing with those who suffer, just as Jesus did. We are called to be a people whose love seeks dignity and justice for those who are historically deemed unlovable by some arbitrary or historical standard. And we ourselves will not ever be finished, seeking to serve Christ in those we meet, loving our neighbor as ourselves. We too will suffer. Our suffering Savior is a witness to that. So today, we find ourselves in the darkness of the tomb. Poet Theodore Rothke wrote, "In a dark time, the eye begins to see." We have reached the darkest of times in the church year today. Our Savior has been killed. We're left to wonder why. And we're left to seek a narrative of peace and joy rather than of justice, lost, and oppression winning. It is time for us to focus our eyes. Let them see clearly. Jesus said, "It is finished," yet we are still here. We are the witnesses. We are the inheritors of the overwhelming and radical love of a Savior that was there in the beginning and will surely come again. For now, allow your eyes to adjust, to see the world as Jesus, to heed the words of St. Paul to the Hebrews, and consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds. We cannot let the darkness overcome us. Now is the time for our eyes to begin to see the divine image within ourselves. Jesus is finished, and we are still here and invited to listen in the stillness, to see the darkness as a gift of discernment, and to gather our courage for the journey ahead. It is finished. It is indeed.